I want to call it a lie, but it's not really a lie. It's just a disingenuous argument.
Very inconsistent. It's extremely inconsistent.
Like,
from
I don't
somebody...
trust you. I don't trust you anymore because you've gone back on what you say you stand for.
And from someone who preaches constantly ideological consistency.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And another place where he falls apart is when they talk about rape, right?
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that fucked me up is he starts to then talk about ways that he refutes arguments, right? And it was it exposed a lot for me that a lot of the things that he's saying are not necessarily genuine views. They are debate tactics thinly veiled as genuine opinions, right? Because he's expressing, he even said, this is how I shut down this argument. And then laid out. So when they say, oh, so you're going to force, women, or you think that women should have to carry rape babies, right? And he says, no, I'm not going to force anyone to do anything, but I'm not going to allow them to take a life. Mm-hmm. Right? So I'm not going to force you, but I'm not going to allow you. You're going to tell someone what they can and cannot do. Do you, as Steven Crowder, feel that anybody can tell you what you can and cannot do besides God? No. So, but in this particular instance, you get to dictate because you don't agree with this, what someone's rights are. Mm-hmm. That's completely counter to your entire ideology, right? And then when...
Like when he does his change my mind video,
right? Because
on abortion is murder.
Well, to expand on the rape thing, right? Mm-hmm. Because his explanation for the rape thing is I'm not forcing you to have that baby. I'm pro foster care, adoption, contraception, or parenthood, but I'm not pro the fifth option, right? Mm-hmm. Like I'm pro-choice, but I'm pro these choices. Yeah. I'm pro the choices that I'm going to give to you, right? This false choice that he lays out. Yep. That's the thing that fucks me up. Is that's very inconsistent.
You're not free to abort your baby, but you're free to pursue these other options. Does that sound really fucking familiar?
Yeah.
Does that sound like these are the same exact things you're fighting against when you're coming to these mandates?
Yes.
It's the same exact thing. You're just standing on high because you believe that abortion is murder. And while I may or may not disagree with you, I'm going to say it like that, you're logically being inconsistent. You have ideological inconsistencies here because you are talking about an individual's liberty to make a decision, except in this case because now you're infringing on an unborn child's right. So now you have rights, unless, of course, you can't even try to make sense of it, is what I'm saying, because it is a logical, and like you said, it's a logical and ideological inconsistency. You can't tie the two together because they are inconsistent with each other and cannot be tied to.
And on top of that, like I said, these things specifically that he's laying out are debate tactics. No, that's not an opinion. That's a debate tactic.
Yep.
All that
You're trying to shut down the argument.
That's all that is a way to shut down the opposite argument. That's not an opinion.
That's a win and loss situation.
Yes, that's all that is. It's something you devised for Change My Minds. So when someone says that to you, you can lay out, no, I am pro-choice. I'm pro these choices. Here's the microphone. What do you have to say about that?
Yep.
That's all. That's not an opinion. That's a debate tactic thinly veiled as a genuine opinion on this topic, which is dark.
I want to see, because the problem, I like the Change My Mind videos, right?
They're great.
They're great. I would like to see Change My Mind videos with people that are intellectually sound enough to make a coherent argument that might side with him, but be able to point out his logical inconsistencies.
And we did on Joe Rogan the last time he was on there when they talked about weed and debated for over an hour. He wasn't able to get past Joe Rogan's question of, so what you're saying is you don't like it and you don't think people should do it.
Yep.
And then he would continue to say, well, I told you I don't even want to talk about it. Right? And he hasn't been on since.
Yep.
And that's
can't win.
Because and again, I watch Steven Crowder almost every day, right?
Well, but his schedule's a little.
But even the Change My Minds are him picking college students that he can destroy the most of the time in a conversation.
Yeah. He's picking it's cannon fodder.
Yes, and
let me pick this cannon fodder so I can have a W on this one.
Yes, and they're great videos.
They're great.
Right?
Yes, because they have the solid arguments.
But when he stands up to someone that will debate him, quote unquote, because it wasn't a debate on Joe Rogan. It turned into kind of an argument when it started out to be a regular Joe Rogan episode. Yeah. But reporters won't debate him because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Yes.
No journalists know what they're talking about.
Yep.
So nobody he challenges to a debate is going to accept it, right? But nobody who could combat him, he will debate.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not saying he's, declining challenges all the time because I don't know. But like I said, we saw it on Joe Rogan. He couldn't. Joe Rogan, who's just a podcast host. He's not a professor. He's not a teacher. He's not a journalist.
Not a public intellectual.
No. He's a smart person, a very intelligent person who hosts a podcast.
Who has conversations with people.
Yes.
I think that's at the root there.
Yes.
Because Crowder wins debates.
Yes.
Ben Shapiro wins debates. But when you're having a conversation, like in Shapiro and Dave Rubin's world, right? Shapiro's got I'm a practicing Orthodox Jew, so this is out for me. But you have a conversation with a friend of yours.
Yes.
To go through all these things, and they give you shit, you give them shit, you go back and forth, and you're in each other's business, but you're thinking about your own logical path to the route to the ultimate destination that you land on. And when you're having a conversation versus a debate, there's not stakes involved. The minute it becomes a debate, it's a win or loss situation, and conversations can get disingenuous really fast because it's all about trying to find the logical fallacy in the other person's argument, not actually trying to convince them to change their mind.
Yeah, in this same clip, he
really bad.
Talked about just go for it. In this same clip, he talked about a lot of the far left bills and laws that Colin and I talked about, the ones, abortion up until 40 weeks and things like that. And again, I don't agree with those things, but the issue that I have with the way that he's presenting these arguments is that, the argument that the left is worst isn't a justification for bills like the Texas bill or other heartbeat bills or things like that. The insanity of one side does not justify the insanity of the other, right? It doesn't justify the bell curve swinging that far the other way. Ideally, you still want it to rest somewhere in the middle. And so it seems, again, very odd for somebody who's generally along the lines of some type of compromise, right? Because he recognizes that we live in a free country where people aren't going to see the same way as him. But to then use these far left bills as a justification for, like I said, the bell curve swinging so far the other way is inconsistent. It doesn't make any sense to me, and I think it's a false choice. It's a false argument. That's bullshit.
That's why we call it a bad take.
Yes. I think that's all that I had on Crowder, right? So now I have kind of some big questions that we can explore, right? One of the issues I think that people in general run into, right, people as a whole run into when we're talking about bills like this is where life begins, right? Steven Crowder has talked a lot about his the only ideologically or logically consistent line he can find is conception, because that's when a separate set of DNA is formed, right?
That's where, that's like the science argument.
Yeah, okay. I think that's a very valid argument, right? I think it's very valid. Some other people will say a heartbeat, because that's when you can say there's a heart there, right? And Steven Crowder goes, do you have two hearts? Do you have four legs? Do you fucking, whatever? Like, that's his thing. So as soon as a heartbeat, that's his thing. Yeah. There are some people who, for a long time, my deal was like 20 weeks pain. When he could feel pain, I'm like, okay, you're definitely registering things here. Like, I have issues with this now. Like, now we have a problem, right? There are other people that say until the moment of birth, it's not a baby. It's whatever you're going to call it, And so that's when life begins. Mm-hmm. I don't know, right? I don't know that.
Are babies personal property?
No.
Until they're born?
No.
They're inside of an individual's person.
I don't think so.
I never really thought about that.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because like a dog is your property. Like they're actually your property under the law.
If you ask her, she's like, bitch, you don't own me.
Under the law, they are your property. But I don't think that I don't know. I don't know enough legally to say whether or not there's been a court case for like the life rights of an unborn. I don't know. And so that's part of the confusion, right? I don't know, and I don't think anybody really knows when life actually begins, right? And I'm not saying we're going to now try and decide when life begins, because I don't think that we're qualified to do that, right?
Hard no.
But one of the issues that I run into, right? We're in the explorative opinion part now. We're having open discussion now. When we're talking about abortion, is when life begins, which would then mean to me when that baby begins to have individual rights. I don't know. I don't know when that happens, but even if we assume that a baby after 20 weeks or whatever, some random number, then has individual rights, I feel like it's a kind of a dangerous game to overrule the rights of a mother who's been alive for, again, let's pick 25 years, right? Who's actively been alive, actively exercising these rights for 25 years, to overrule that person's rights because of a baby's rights, who may or may not have rights because they may or may not be alive, because we don't know. I think that's a kind of a dangerous game to start to play, but again, I don't know, because I don't know when the baby is alive or not.
Yeah. That is a tough game to play, because even when you think about just children in general.
Right.
Children don't really, where do their rights start and end until they become an adult?
I don't know.
Because, it happens in all sorts of different legal cases, like with the children that, I don't remember the word, but it's divorced their parents for whatever reason. And stuff like that. It's and there's a lot of arguments of, and even from the Crowder side,
emancipation,
that unborn baby has the right to life.
Right.
But at the same time, until you're 18, you don't necessarily have the right to do whatever you want. Your parents tell you what the fuck to do, and that's the way it goes. Until you're 18, they don't have the right to tell you what to do anymore. It's not even a right. They legally can't tell you what to do anymore.
Right.
But yeah, we don't have a definition of where the human rights, where this bad boy comes into play. When do you get to use this as the rule book?
Right, and one of the reasons that concerns me so much is because individual and personal liberty are such a cornerstone for me. That's where I build most of my shit off of. Is individual and personal liberty.
Yeah.
And so if someone could verify, and I'm not asking for this, but if someone could verify that a baby was alive at 2 weeks, and therefore that baby should have rights at 2 weeks, you're playing a dangerous game. But again, that woman has been alive for X amount of years. So whose rights mean more at that point? Obviously the baby has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But when do you get it? But should that then supersede the rights of this woman who has been alive for X amount of years, actively exercising these rights? I don't know.
Yeah, who already has the rights?
I don't know. And that's not me trying to stump anybody, or be like, how do you answer that? I don't know. And
it's a good question to ask, because nobody's asking the question. Everybody just goes, well, the minute it has a heartbeat, it's life. Can't murder it because it's life.
Right.
The minute of conception, the minute that sperm makes its way into the egg, if it's left alone, it'll be a life. Technically, that's a life. If we find a single-celled organism on Mars, we're going to call it life on Mars. But realistically, that, I think, I'm just trying to make sure. The Founding Fathers, at the point of the Constitution, when it was written, little to no understanding of prenatal science.
Yeah.
We'll just go with that, right? They didn't know. What's to say we should not have an amendment that says, okay, this is when you get rights. This is when you're born. Or when you're whatever the fuck. Right. This is when your rights kick in. After that, boom, nothing. The minute you exit the womb, maybe, I don't know what it is, but that seems like
he's
good territory for an actual constitutional amendment